Now welcome to another Battle of the Heroes and Villains, where this time we'll be taking a look at the results of the poll for Cassian Andor. We'll then be comparing those results against all the other characters we've done thus far, before I then read and respond to some of the comments left on the poll. And as always, you can already head down to nominate and or vote for which character we do next by responding to my pinned comment below with a name, or voting by giving a thumbs up to the character already listed that you'd like to see done. And yes, to those who have been asking, any and all characters are eligible for revote. However, there should be at least some sort of justification or reason for the revote, like they've recently been seen in a new show, movie, game, or whatever it might be. Either way, whatever character gets the most votes in the next 24 hours or so will be the winner and the character we will do next. But for now, on to the results for Cassian Andor, where we'll see that 47% of voters, nearly half, gave him an A. 34% went with a B, 12% thought we were dealing with a C-tier character here, which left 3% to give him a D, and a final 4% that thought he should get an F. And so when we do all the math here, and consider A a score of 5 and F a score of 1, that means Cassian Andor ends up with an average score of 4.17, which puts him into a tie for 18th place with Darth Maul, which then means we had to go to the tiebreaker, which is percentage of A votes. And in this case, going back and finding that Maul video from like 3 years ago, it turns out Cassian got a higher percentage of A's than Maul did, and thus finds himself placed above Maul on our rankings. However, there may have unfortunately been some confusion with the poll. After reading through all the comments, it became kind of clear that at least some people, not a lot, but certainly some, voted on the series, on the Andor series, and not on the character Cassian Andor. And in hindsight, I should have specified that. I should have put character Cassian Andor in there, but I thought including the Cassian part, his first name, would indicate that's what I meant. I meant the character, not the show. Not to mention, though, the series Battle of the Heroes and Villains returned last week with Quinlan Vos, as a lot of you know. But this was the first actual vote we'd had in almost a year, so that may have also added to the confusion a bit, especially for those newer to the channel who didn't even know this was a thing. So anyway, I've considered running the poll again and being very specific this time about what I'm talking about, making it clear it's the character and not the show we're voting on, and that if the results are relatively close to the same as the first poll, I'll just keep the first poll's results and that'll be that. But if they're rather different, kind of drastically different, I then go with the new results instead. And mind you, there would be no new video or anything like that, so no need to comment on the poll or anything. And I'll see how you all feel about this in the comments below. Tell me what you think we should do about this. Should we revote or leave it as is? And we'll go from there. But for now, let's get to the comments left on the poll. But not before quickly saying thank you to everyone and anyone who votes, comments, and watches these or any of my videos. It is all very much appreciated. Also, I can't say thank you enough to anyone and everyone who supports this channel on Patreon or my other channel on Patreon with my wife, Sailor Naboo. Thank you so much for that. And now, as we always do, let's kick off the comments with the top-rated one, which this time came to us from Just a Duck, who said, "He went from being a relatively forgettable character to one of the best written characters in Star Wars." And I'm going to kind of combine the response to that comment with a response from this one from Pepito Benito, who said, "He's not even close to the best character of his own show, but he's still far better written than just about everything else Star Wars these days." Okay, so at first, these almost sound a little contradictory, don't they? One is saying Andor is one of the best written characters in all of Star Wars, while the other is saying he's not even close to the best written character or best character in his own show. But here's the thing. There's a lot of great characters in Andor. Most of them are extremely well written, and it'll be very, very interesting as we do more characters from that show to see where they fall in the rankings, to see where indeed Andor ranks in his own show against other characters in it. And yeah, I know there are those out there who do not like Andor, the series I'm talking about, and that's fine. I don't know why sometimes in this fandom there's this need to hate on those who do or don't like the things we do or don't like. I know I've gotten plenty of hate over the years for not liking the sequels, but I got no hate for anyone who doesn't like Andor for whatever reason you don't like it. I mean, I wish you enjoyed it. I wish you saw what others did, because others, including myself, see one of the best pieces of Star Wars content ever, filled with amazingly carefully crafted characters, of which Andor is only one, and arguably, as these comments kind of point out, not even close to the best one. And so yeah, both of these comments, in my opinion, are kind of accurate, aren't they? Alright, let's now move on to this comment from a spooky Halloween gal who said, "What I love most about him is that he isn't perfect. He sometimes does questionable things, even for good reasons. Sometimes heroes do bad things, sometimes villains do good things. Cassian is a perfect example of that, an A for me." And with that first shot he took in Rogue One when he shot his own informant in the back, Cassian kind of broke the mold, or broke this belief or impression that we'd always gotten from the films that the Rebellion are a bunch of straight-laced, squeaky clean good guys who would never do anything questionable. And mind you, in the mainline trilogy films, I'm completely fine with that. I'm okay with more of a focus on good versus evil. I don't necessarily think we need to get into what the reality of the Rebellion no doubt is, or would have to be when you really think about it. And that then gets revealed in a lot of ways through Cassian Andor, both in Rogue One and now in Andor, which is that sometimes questionable things need to be done in the name of good to stop evil, which is something I talk about a lot, what I call the dilemma of good, the dilemma of holding to your morals or your principles or your ethical code while trying to stop someone or something that likely doesn't abide by anything of the sort, that will in no way limit what they're willing to do or who they're willing to hurt, to try to get whatever they want, or to keep power in the case of the Empire. And going back to the comment, Andor is indeed far from a perfect character in terms of, well, not only the questionable things we see him do, but on the more personal level, with all the issues he clearly has in his day-to-day life even, and how he deals with other people, even those who are closest to him, like his family or his mother in particular. One of the things that made his show so interesting and the character so great wasn't because it had a ton of action, as many who don't like it will point out, but because it gave us real characters with sometimes very real life problems that we can indeed relate to. Which kind of brings us to this comment from Lord Emperor Vader, who said, "Man, has he risen through the ranks. I think that Cassian was a C at best in Rogue One, but Season 1 of Andor pushed him to an A, making him one of the most relatable characters in Star Wars. Sure, Cassian is not a good person, but he's just trying to survive until he finds his purpose, and I think many can relate to that. I also love how Cassian is not a great leader, but always knows how to push those people that are leaders in just the right ways to cause change. I can't wait to see how his story continues, and he is proof that even if you know how his story ends, it is worth telling." And I couldn't agree more. One of the most relatable things about him is indeed trying to survive until you find your place or purpose. Because I am sure almost everybody on the planet can relate to that to some degree at the very least. I'm sure we've all had that moment or moments where we look at ourselves in the mirror and ask, what am I doing with my life? And sometimes when we're at our lowest or most lost, you could say, something happens that makes things, initially at least, feel even worse or derails what little we did have going on in our life. And somehow that's what leads us to our real purpose, which is exactly what Cassian's story is representing or is all about. It's where he starts, at his lowest, at his absolute lowest point, when he kills the security officers, and then his story then ends, so far after Season 1, with him finding what he's really meant to do. And though hopefully we don't have a story quite as grim and tragic as that, hopefully we don't need to do anything quite as extreme to start us down a new path as Cassian did, and then to take up arms against an evil regime at the end of said path, but we can still see ourselves in that type of story, and that's why Cassian works so well as a character. Alright, next up then we have a comment here from Diana Blackwell, who said, "Cassian Andor is the fulcrum of the rebellion. Remember that the Alliance rejected Jin's proposal. Without Cassian's decision to help her, and the support of the other rebels he gathered for the mission to Scarif, then the Death Star plans are never secured, the Battle of Yavin doesn't happen, and Luke Skywalker does not continue on to his destiny. Cassian is absolutely an A character. This is why we have a series detailing his development, and why it's so important to see this era of Star Wars lore." And that's an excellent point. I mean, I feel like a lot of people in the comments, and understandably so, they focused far more on him from Andor and kind of forgot the pivotal role he played in Rogue One. That yeah, without him helping Jin and not following orders or disobeying orders, the rebellion probably never gets their hands on the Death Star plans, and Luke certainly never blows up the Death Star at the Battle of Yavin, and the rebellion likely never defeats the Empire, and Luke never goes on to, well, let's not talk about what Luke goes on to do or not do. Anyway, Cassian's decision to disobey orders and help Jin was one of the most important decisions in the history of the galaxy, literally. which is why I think his story in Andor still works despite knowing the end point, especially given where we see him start out at. That he is this very selfish guy who you can't imagine giving his life for a cause greater than the self. And so we get to see this journey from that guy again at his lowest point who seems very selfish, to the guy who willingly sacrifices everything for the rebellion. Alright, our next comment then comes to us from Cheesehead Caleb, who said, "B from me, he's not so much a great character in his own right, but rather a conduit that brings out the best in characters around him, both in the meta and the non-meta sense." And I couldn't agree more, and nowhere is that shown or featured better than in the prison arc with Kino Loy. Cassian knows he's not a leader, but he spotted who could be and did everything he could to get him to act. And he knew just how to push his buttons in the right way, mainly because for most of his life it seems he's been a pretty good manipulator. He gets people to trust him regardless, or borrow him money, as we learn earlier in the show. And he does this despite some of his more obvious character flaws. Again, these are all things that make the character interesting to watch, despite the fact that we know exactly how his story is going to end. And speaking of ending, let's get to just a few final comments before wrapping this up. Starting with this one from Bullet Rain 100, who I'm not going to read it all, but again, I sometimes like to post comments that are on the long side, but worth reading nonetheless. So if you feel like it, do pause and give it a read. Alright, our next one then comes to us from JD Studios, who said, "I found him to be the standout character from Rogue One, as he was the more complex character. We saw some of the less than heroic things he did in the name of the rebellion in Rogue One, and in Andor, we got a taste of who he is and what he had to do to survive in a brutal galaxy." Next, then, this one from Joshua Pawson, who said, "I will stand and die on the hill that Cassian is both a great character and the best character in Rogue One. He has a great introduction, believable flaws, a clear and strong character arc, and an emotional death. What else could you want?" Then we have this one from Matthew Wayness, who said, "He's not the richest character, but I appreciate that he does unsavory things to further the rebellion. Introduces some shades of gray in the series, B-." We also have this one from OK Maku Tree, who said, "The only new character from Disney Star Wars that I genuinely love. His growth feels organic and is told in a manner that respects the audience's intelligence. I'm excited to see what they do with him in Season 2. And finally, this comment from The Reckless Gamer Inc., who said, "A for Andor. Because we already know how his story will end, it's allowed them to flesh out his character in a great way, showing us where he comes from and how he feels about things, seeing why he does the things he does. I liked him already in Rogue One as is, but the show really just blossomed this good character into a great one. A for Andor." Well, that's all I got for you this time. Now it's your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you think about Cassian Andor, or what you think about what I or anyone else had to say about him here in this video. And of course, you can always vote for or nominate which character we do next. Just check out that pinned comment below. Whatever you choose to do, leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.